My parents sold my 4,000 PCs for my sister's shopping spree, so I took back more than just my computer. Have you ever walked into your room expecting to see the one thing that keeps you grounded, only to discover it's been sold by your own parents to finance your little sister's latest shopping spree? Imagine saving for years, pouring every bonus check, every birthday gift, every freelance payment into a custom-built machine that isn't just a computer, but an extension of who you are, only to have it vanish because your family decided your passion didn't matter. That's how I learned exactly where I stood in my own home, and what I did next unraveled our picture-perfect facade in a way none of us could have predicted. I'm 24 now, but I've been obsessed with gaming and building PCs since I could reach a keyboard. It started with tinkering on old hand-me-downs. In middle school, replacing RAM and fans, reading forums late into the night. While other kids played soccer, I was comparing GPUs and thermal paste. By the time I hit college, I was known as the tech guy. Building my dream rig became my Everest. I spent years squirreling away money from waiting tables, designing logos for local bands, selling old games on eBay, anything that would get me closer to that perfect custom setup. I wasn't just building a toy. This PC was the backbone of my freelance graphic design work. The platform where I edited videos, ran design software, learned new skills. It was my way to carve out independence while still living under my parents' roof. Speaking of my parents, let me paint you a picture. My father is a retired Navy officer, turned real estate agent who believes that hard work means wearing a suit and making cold calls. My mother is a primary school teacher who spends her days telling other people's children to reach for the stars and her evenings telling me to be realistic. They aren't villains, they've always put a roof over our heads and dinner on the table. But when it comes to their two children, they have a clear favorite, my 18-year-old sister, Kendra. If you've ever met a girl who believes the world is a stage and she's the lead actress, that's Kendra. She lives for designer labels, limited edition sneakers, and expensive skincare routines she sees on influencers' reels. My parents have spent her entire life bending over backwards to meet her every whim. If she wanted a dress for a school dance, Dad would take an extra client. If she needed the newest phone, Mom would pick up extra tutoring gigs. When money was tight, it wasn't Kendra who did without. It was me. I can't count the times my mom would look me in the eye and say, "You're older, Jordan. You can handle disappointment," when I asked for a pair of shoes or a trip that Kendra was getting. Or how my dad would shrug off my requests with, "You're a boy. You don't need as much." At family dinners, any conversation about my interests quickly shifted back to Kendra's cheer competitions or her latest TikTok dance. I learned early on not to resent her. It wasn't her fault she was spoiled. It was theirs. So I buried myself in work and saved and dreamed. I built my identity around things they couldn't control, the PC parts I bought with my own money, the clients I found on my own, the games I conquered with my friends. I thought if I kept my head down, worked hard, and stayed out of their way, maybe they'd respect me for who I was. Spoiler, they didn't. A few months ago, on a damp Saturday afternoon, I was out grabbing burgers with my best friend Liam. He's the guy who has been in my gaming squad since we were 12, the only person who gets as nerdy about frame rates and processors as I do. We were tossing around strategies for the next esports tournament we wanted to enter. "We need to practice our rotations on the new map," he said between bites. "Your rig can handle the patch, right?" I laughed and assured him it could. That machine was my pride and joy. I could not wait to get home, fire it up, and sink into the digital world. The sense of anticipation was almost a physical thing as I walked up the driveway. My backpack felt heavier, like it knew something I didn't. The moment I opened my bedroom door, my heart dropped to my stomach. My desk was empty. I blinked, thinking maybe I'd walked into the wrong room or that I'd been robbed. But my posters were on the walls, my clothes in the hamper. The only thing missing was the towering black case that housed my life. My monitors were gone. My mechanical keyboard, my gaming mouse, the drawing tablet my uncle had given me for my birthday, all vanished. Panic flared through me. I ripped open my closet. Nothing. I sprinted downstairs, my mind racing. Maybe we were robbed, I thought. Maybe someone knew about my setup and broke in. But the living room TV was still there. My dad's wallet sat on the coffee table untouched. My mom was stirring pasta sauce at the stove while humming to herself. Dad was flipping through a magazine. Kendra sat on the couch, scrolling on her phone, a pile of glossy shopping bags at her feet. "Where's my computer?" I blurted, my voice higher than I intended. Four heads turned. Dad looked at me as if I'd asked something trivial like where the salt was. Mom didn't even stop stirring. "Oh, that," she said casually. "We sold it this morning." Every sound in the house faded. "You what?" My heart pounded against my ribs. Dad sighed, folding his magazine and leaning back in his chair. "Your sister needed a new wardrobe for the fundraiser gala," he explained, as if that was the most obvious thing in the world. "She can't show up in last season's clothes. We didn't have extra cash, so we sold the computer. It was just sitting there." "Just sitting there?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "That wasn't a knickknack. That was my PC. I saved for years to build it. I use it for my freelance projects. How could you just sell it without asking me?" Mom finally turned to face me, her expression hardening. "Watch your tone, Jordan. We're your parents. We made a decision for the household. Kendra has an important event that could open doors for her future. You're always on that thing playing games. You can build another one." I laughed bitterly, disbelief and fury mixing. "Do you have any idea how long it took me to buy those parts? How many hours I spent after my shifts assembling and configuring it? And what about my deadlines? I have clients waiting for designs. I can't do my job without that computer." Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Graphic design isn't a real job. You spend more time yelling on Discord than working. Stop being dramatic." I could feel my face flush. It was like being 13 again, begging for a skateboard and being told no, because that's not for us. Except this time, they had taken something from me. Not just taken, sold it to a stranger for a fraction of what it was worth. The injustice burned. I stormed back to my room, slamming the door so hard the house shook. My phone buzzed with a text from Liam. "You online yet?" I typed frantically. "No, my parents sold my rig. Literally sold it. I want to scream." His response came back instantly. "Dude, what? They didn't even ask? That's insane. Come over. We'll figure out something." But I couldn't leave. I was shaking, pacing circles around my now barren room, replaying the casual way my parents had talked about my livelihood. That night at dinner, I decided to ask Kendra directly. Maybe, just maybe, she'd show some remorse. I found her trying on a pair of metallic heels in her room, a dress draped over her arm. The tags were still attached. "Do you even know what Mom and Dad did to afford that?" I asked, leaning in the doorway. She barely glanced up. "What are you talking about?" she asked, fluffing her curls. "They sold my computer," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "My $4,000 setup, the one I built from scratch. Gone. All to pay for your designer stuff." Kendra shrugged, inspecting herself in the mirror. "So?" she said, completely unfazed. "It's just a computer. You'll build another. You always have money." My jaw tightened. That wasn't just a computer, Kendra. It was years of effort. It was my work. "And you? You walk around in shoes you'll wear once. How can you be so indifferent?" She rolled her eyes. "Not my problem. I didn't sell it. Mom and Dad did. I just mentioned that you barely use it anymore because you're always at work. They thought it was a waste collecting dust." I stared at her in disbelief. "You knew exactly what they'd do. You knew they prioritize you. You planted the idea, then sat back and watched." She put a hand on her hip. "Jordan, don't twist this. You're the one always boasting about your independence. I figured you wouldn't mind helping the family for once. And maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your little games, you'd understand what's important. I have an image to maintain. You're just sulking in your room playing with lights on a machine." I turned away before the anger boiled over. There was no point. Talking to Kendra about responsibility was like explaining color theory to a goldfish. As the days wore on, the tension in the house became suffocating. My dad carried on like nothing had happened. My mom acted put out whenever I mentioned the computer, sighing theatrically and muttering about sacrifices. Kendra flaunted her new wardrobe across social media, posting pictures of herself in sequin dresses with captions like, "So grateful to my parents for always believing in me." Each time I scrolled past a post, it felt like a slap. Liam continued to be my sounding board. "Don't let them walk all over you," he said one night over the phone. "If you let this slide, they'll keep thinking it's okay to take from you. You need to stand up for yourself." He was right. As much as I wanted to hide, to avoid conflict, I couldn't keep sacrificing for a family that saw my hard work as expendable. So I gathered every shred of proof I could find that my PC belonged to me. Receipts for every part, some printed from months-old emails. Photos of me holding the motherboard, of the case on my floor half-assembled. Screenshots of the invoices I'd sent clients. I reached out to the man who had bought my PC through a second-hand electronics website. "I'm the original owner," I explained, voice shaking slightly. My parents sold it without my permission. I need it back. Can I buy it off you? He sympathized but was firm. I can sell it back for the same $1,500 I paid, he said. That was less than half of what the machine cost me. But it was something. I didn't care about the money. I cared about principle. At dinner 2 nights later, I decided to confront my parents. They were discussing neighborhood gossip over roast chicken when I cleared my throat and placed a folder of documents on the table. I want my money back, I said, looking at them both. Mom's eyes narrowed. What money? She asked. The $1,500 you got from selling my computer, I said, trying to control the tremor in my voice. I built that machine with my own funds. It legally belongs to me. You had no right to sell it. Dad scoffed. We've been through this. Your sister needed help. We made a decision for the family. No, I countered. You made a decision that hurt me. Without my consent. That's theft. And I'm asking you to pay me back. Mom exhaled sharply, like I'd insulted her personally. How dare you accuse us of stealing from our own child? We did it for your sister. She's family. Family is about sacrifice. Family is about respect, I shot back. And it seems I'm the only one sacrificing. Kendra gets whatever she wants. I'm expected to shut up and take it. That stops now. Either you reimburse me or I'll take legal action. Dad slammed his fist on the table. Watch your tone. We are your parents. Everything in this house belongs to us. You live under our roof. Technically, the computer was ours. I held up the receipts, my hands steady. These say otherwise. And this, I added, sliding over the buyer's info, proves you sold it. So please pay me or get ready for small claims court. A heavy silence filled the room. For a moment, I thought Dad might actually stand up and throw me out. Instead, his shoulders sagged. Fine, he muttered. We'll get you the money, but don't expect anything else from us. Mom looked like she wanted to cry from humiliation or maybe anger. Kendra rolled her eyes and muttered something about drama under her breath. I laughed bitterly. I've been on my own for years, I said. The only difference now is I'm done letting you take advantage of me. The next day, Dad handed me $1,500 in wrinkled 20s. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. I took the money and drove straight to the buyer's house. He shook my hand and wheeled my tower and monitor to my car. The moment I put my hands on the familiar case, relief flooded me. It was like reclaiming a part of myself. But as I drove home, the relief mingled with a deeper sadness. Nothing about my family had changed. They still saw me as a resource, not a member. With my PC back, I set it up on a folding table because my original desk had been dismantled and used for Kendra's makeup vanity. I powered it on and watched the lights flicker, the fans hum. It felt like hugging an old friend. I fulfilled my pending design contracts using it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that living in that house was stifling. My parents avoided me. Kendra pretended I didn't exist unless she needed to borrow my charger. The air was thick with resentment and unspoken words. I started to think about leaving. Liam encouraged it. You need your own space, he said, a place where you're not constantly disrespected. The idea both terrified and excited me. Rent in our city wasn't cheap and my savings had just taken a hit, but the thought of staying, of continuing to be an afterthought was worse. I began browsing listings in the evenings after finishing freelance work. Tiny studios with single burners and bathrooms the size of closets, shared houses with strangers. Each time I scrolled, I felt a spark of hope. That hope kept me from sinking back into complacency. Liam suggested, what if you double down on freelancing or start streaming regularly again? You're good at entertaining. People would watch. He wasn't wrong. I'd tried streaming years ago but had let it fall by the wayside when life got hectic. Now, with a purpose, it made sense. The next morning, as my parents bickered about which credit card to use for Kendra's latest jacket, I silently signed a lease for a studio apartment 8 miles away. It was a single room with a kitchenette, a tiny balcony that overlooked a busy street, and a bathroom where you could brush your teeth while sitting on the toilet. It was mine. The week leading up to my move felt like tiptoeing through a minefield. I didn't want to make a dramatic scene. I needed time to pack and move equipment without my parents sabotaging me or guilt-tripping me to stay. So I moved in stages. When I knew Mom and Dad would be at work and Kendra out shopping, I'd stuff boxes of clothes and books into the trunk of my beat-up car, drive to Liam's place, and stash them there. He and his older sister let me use their guest room as a temporary storage unit. Meanwhile, I updated my portfolio, emailed past clients, and put up posts on design forums advertising my services. I spent late nights testing streaming software, designing overlays, creating a schedule. Within days, I had enough commissions lined up to cover my first month's rent. Every time a new inquiry popped up in my inbox, my heart beat faster. Each deposit was a vote of confidence in myself, in my ability to survive outside my parents' orbit. 2 nights before move-out day, Mom knocked on my door. She didn't wait for me to answer before stepping inside. "Can we talk?" she asked, as if she hadn't been ignoring me for weeks. "I don't have anything to say," I replied, folding a stack of t-shirts. "Just hear me out," she said, sitting down on the edge of my bed like she had when I was a little boy afraid of the dark. "We didn't sell your computer to hurt you, Jordan. Kendra had mentioned it was valuable and said you hardly used it anymore. We thought selling it would be smart. You've always been so independent, we assumed you'd understand." I faced her anger simmering. "So, it was Kendra's idea?" I asked, knowing the answer. She hesitated. "Not exactly. She mentioned it when we were looking at her options. And we thought she had a point. We thought you'd sacrifice for your sister, like we always have." I laughed bitterly. "You thought I would sacrifice my livelihood for a dress? That says everything." Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like she might cry. But instead of apologizing, she stood and left. That was our family in a nutshell. No accountability, just excuses. The morning I moved, I left a short note on the kitchen counter. "I need space and time to focus on myself. I can't live here anymore. Please respect my decision." No drawn-out explanation, no plea for understanding. I loaded my last box into my car. My stomach knotted with a mix of dread and anticipation. Liam helped me unload at my new place. We set up my PC on the only desk, propped my monitor on a stack of books. As I plugged in the familiar cables, I felt that old thrill. That night, I went live on my streaming channel for the first time in months. My audience was small, maybe 20 viewers, but their messages filled the chat with encouragement. "Welcome back. Missed your streams. How've you been?" It wasn't a fortune, but it was mine. When the stream ended, I looked around my one-room apartment. The paint was peeling in some corners. The mini fridge hummed loudly. Outside, cars honked, but there was something liberating about the silence that followed. No one knocking to demand I run errands. No one telling me to turn down the volume. For the first time, the space felt like it belonged to me. Of course, my parents noticed my absence sooner than I hoped. By midday, my phone lit up with Mom's face. I let it ring. She left a voicemail, her voice quivering between anger and hurt. "You could have at least told us you were leaving. Your father and I are very disappointed. Family is about sticking together, not running away." I deleted it halfway through. Dad called next. I declined. Text messages followed. "You're hurting your mother," read one. "We've always done what's best for you," said another. Then, a classic from Dad, "You're being reckless. Come home." I tossed the phone aside and unpacked my dishes. Kendra's text popped up midstream. "Lol, you moved out? Seriously?" Mom's freaking. "Maybe call her before she has a heart attack." I laughed. It was so typical. She saw the chaos but felt no responsibility. The guilt didn't stop. Every day brought new messages from my parents, alternating between pleading and fury. "You're turning your back on your family," Mom wrote. "Kendra's upset too. Don't you care?" The fact that she thought invoking Kendra's supposed feelings would sway me made me want to scream. Kendra hadn't spoken to me in weeks except for that one flippant text. Meanwhile, I was thriving. My freelance client list grew. My streams averaged 50 viewers, then 100. I'd wake up, brew coffee in my tiny kitchenette, design a logo for a local coffee shop, hop on stream for 2 hours, and feel content. One evening, Liam came over with takeout. We sprawled on the floor, eating noodles and watching old tournament clips. "You think they'll ever let it go?" he asked between mouthfuls. I shrugged. "Probably not. They don't think they've done anything wrong." "But I'm not going back," he nodded. "Good. You can't heal in the same place you were hurt." His words stuck with me. The next morning, after another barrage of guilt trip texts, I opened a blank message and typed for a long time. "I've made my decision." I began, "I'm not coming back. This isn't selfish. I need to put myself first. I've spent years feeling like my needs didn't matter. I hope you can respect my choice, but either way, I'm moving forward without you." My thumb hovered over send. Then I hit it. My heart raced. Mom replied almost instantly with paragraphs about ungratefulness and duty. Dad's response was a curt, "You'll regret this." I read the messages calmly, then turned off notifications. Their words didn't pierce me like they used to. Instead, there was relief, saying my piece, setting a boundary. It was like stepping into sunshine after years in a cellar. Weeks passed. I focused on growing my audience, on honing my design style. I started streaming my design process. answering questions about color theory and software shortcuts. Viewers tipped, sponsors reached out. I wasn't rich, but I paid my rent, my groceries, my internet bill. One afternoon, while grabbing coffee, a family friend cornered me near the sugar station. "I heard you left," she said, eyes wide. "Your parents are beside themselves. They're even asking the community for financial help now that you're not around to pitch in." I blinked. "Why would they need help?" She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "They maxed out their cards on Kendra's expenses, trips, clothes, cars. They assumed you'd pick up the slack, but you're gone. They're drowning." A mix of sadness and grim satisfaction washed over me. I wasn't happy they were struggling, but it validated what I'd always known. Their choices were unsustainable. I wished them no harm, but I refused to be their safety net. Still, the guilt-tripped texts continued. "We're struggling, and you've abandoned us," Mom wrote one day. "If you were a good son, you'd help," Dad sent another. I wanted to laugh. A good son. To them, being good meant sacrificing myself. My definition was different. Kendra never reached out again. She posted selfies with captions like, "So blessed my parents always prioritize what matters." I rolled my eyes and scrolled past. It wasn't my circus anymore. Liam loved to remind me not to engage. "Don't let them bait you," he'd say whenever I'd show him my mom's latest guilt-laden paragraph. He was right. Responding would only pull me back into their orbit. A few weeks before Kendra's 19th birthday, Mom sent a message that made me pause. "Your sister's birthday dinner is next Friday. It would mean a lot to her if you came." For a moment, a pang of nostalgia hit. Our childhood birthday dinners had been warm even if I'd often been sidelined. Part of me longed for the idea of family, not the reality. I showed Liam the text. He shook his head. "Don't do it. It's not about her feelings. It's about appearances. You going makes them look like a united family. They need that photo op for social media." He was right, but the thought of saying no outright made my stomach twist. I'd always been the peacekeeper, the one who swallowed his feelings. Saying no felt revolutionary and terrifying. Eventually, I called Mom. She answered on the first ring, her voice syrupy sweet. "Oh, honey, it's so good to hear from you." I skipped pleasantries. "I got your message about Kendra's dinner." I said, "I won't be coming." Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Excuse me?" she said. "You're really gonna let your sister down after everything we've done for you?" There it was. The guilt card. "This isn't about Kendra," I replied, my voice firm. "It's about boundaries. Every time I try to have a relationship with you, it feels one-sided. I'm not going to pretend everything is okay for one night just to make you feel better." She scoffed. "So you're throwing away your family?" "I'm choosing myself," I said. "Something you never taught me to do." There was a beat of stunned silence. "You'll regret this," she snapped. "Don't come crying when you realize what you've lost." "I've been trying to earn your approval my whole life," I said softly. "And it's never been enough, so I'm done. Goodbye." I hung up. My hands trembled, but a deep calm settled over me. It felt like cutting a tether that had been holding me underwater. After that call, I blocked their numbers. It was drastic, but necessary. The constant flood of manipulative messages stopped. The silence was deafening at first, then soothing. Kendra never reached out, which, in its own way, confirmed everything. I focused on the life I was building. I shared parts of my story on stream when viewers asked what inspired me to start. I needed to prove to myself I could build something without anyone undermining me, I told them. The chat flooded with support. "You're doing amazing," someone wrote. "Your story resonates," another said. I realized I wasn't just playing games and designing logos. I was modeling a kind of bravery for people who felt trapped by their family's expectations. Months turned into a year. I stopped checking Kendra's Instagram. I stopped expecting apologies. I decorated my apartment with cheap prints and plants that thrived in indirect light. I adopted a rescue cat and named her Pixel. She curled on my lap while I worked, purring like a tiny engine. Liam and I entered that gaming tournament we talked about. We didn't win, but we placed in the top 8. Our small community cheered us on, their excitement filling the virtual space with warmth. One afternoon, while sipping tea, Liam asked, "Do you think they'll ever understand?" I looked out at the setting sun, the city skyline glowing orange. "Maybe," I said, "but whether they do or not isn't my problem anymore. I'm finally living my life on my terms." It felt true. The anger had cooled. The sadness had faded. What was left was peace and a fierce commitment to my own well-being. To anyone listening or reading, if you've ever felt like your family doesn't respect you, I want you to hear this. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose yourself without apology. You're not selfish for setting boundaries. I thought leaving meant giving up. I thought cutting ties made me a bad son. But standing up for myself was the best decision I ever made. I built my dream PC again, piece by piece. I rebuilt my life too. And every time I hit go live or send off a design, I'm reminded of what it feels like to be valued not for what you can provide, but for who you are.